Reign, a historical television series, made so many of us fall in love with Mary and Francis's fairy tale. A passionate queen, a sweet boy king, and a love that seemed written in the stars. But how much of it was real? Was Mary, Queen of Scots, truly in love with Francis II? Or was it all beautifully crafted fiction? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on Mary and Francis's real story. And trust me, it's even more heartbreaking than the fairy tale promised. In today's video, we're going to look beyond the romanticized version and see what history really says. How did a 5-year-old Scottish girl become more French than the French themselves? Was her marriage to Francis truly a great love story, or just pure fiction? And perhaps the most tragic part of all, why did Mary still call herself Queen of France, even decades after Francis was gone, even as she faced death with a French rosary in hand? Because here's what Reign didn't show you. Sometimes real love isn't about passion and drama. Sometimes it's about a broken woman who spent decades clinging to the memory of the only person who ever made her feel safe. If you believe real history matters, especially the untold history, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps more people discover the true story behind the reign. So let's start with the most devastating proof that Mary's feelings were absolutely real, something that will break your heart and make you see her entire story differently. In Reign, after Francis dies, Mary grieves briefly, but then moves on to new romances and political schemes. She's the strong, independent queen who doesn't let heartbreak define her. But here's what actually happened. Mary, Queen of Scots, signed herself as Marie Regina, Queen of France, for 19 years after Francis died. Not 1 year, not 5 years, 19 years of refusing to let go. And this isn't romantic speculation. We have the letters. In 1579, nearly 2 decades after Francis's death, Mary wrote to Catherine de' Medici, Francis's mother, and still signed herself as Queen of France. She was imprisoned in England at this point, stripped of her Scottish crown, with no hope of ever seeing France again. But she wouldn't stop being Francis's queen. The show depicts Mary adapting to Scottish customs when she returns home, embracing her Scottish identity. But in reality, Mary continued using the French royal seal in her foreign correspondence, combining Scottish arms with French lilies, as if Francis were still alive. When other royal widows wore black mourning, Mary chose white, the French tradition. Even her bitter enemy John Knox called her attachment to France unnatural, writing about her papist corruption. But contemporary French courtier Pierre de Brantôme, who actually knew Mary personally, observed something far more heartbreaking. She spoke of the late king with such tender regard that tears would come to her eyes even years later. Reign shows us Mary as politically savvy, focused on her future claims and marriages. The historical truth is much more tragic. Historian John Guy noted that Mary's deepest identity remained tied to France. He called it her heart's homeland. In her final prison years, Mary still referred to France as home in private letters. Not Scotland, the country she was born to rule, not England, where she'd lived for nearly 2 decades. France, where a sickly boy king had made her feel like she belonged. The evidence is devastating. She loved other men, but never like Francis, not even close. The proof is written in her own hand year after year. Marie R., the queen who couldn't stop being queen, even when her king was dead.
In Reign, Mary and Francis meet as teenagers and fall instantly in love. There's chemistry, passion, and the kind of romantic tension that drives a TV series. Francis is strong, confident, and charming, everything a romantic lead should be. But here's the historical reality that changes everything. Mary arrived in France in 1548 as a 5-year-old child. Francis was 3. They didn't have a passionate first meeting. They were toddlers who grew up together in the same nursery. The series shows us Francis as this passionate, physically strong lover who can protect Mary and rule France effectively. The devastating truth: Francis II was frail, sickly, and died at just 16 years old. Contemporary Spanish ambassadors described him as weak in constitution and entirely led by his mother. He suffered from chronic ear infections that may have caused brain abscesses, and court physicians reported he was often in severe pain. Reign gives us a marriage that lasts multiple seasons, full of political partnership and romantic drama. But the reality that breaks your heart is this: Mary and Francis were married in April 1558, and he was dead by December 1560. Their entire married life was 18 months. Mary was just 17 when she became a widow. 17 years old and already facing a lifetime without the only person who had ever made her feel completely safe. But here's what Reign got emotionally right, even while getting the facts wrong: the impact of first love lost young. Historian Antonia Fraser observed that Mary's attachment to Francis was childlike and fierce, and when you realize they literally grew up together from early childhood, that makes perfect sense. Reign shows us Mary arriving in France as a confident young woman who maintains her Scottish identity while adapting to French court life. But the historical reality is much darker. Mary was shipped to France at 5 years old as part of a calculated political strategy. Henry II's goal, as he wrote in his own letters, was to make Mary so French she will forget she was ever Scottish. The series presents their bond as a passionate romantic choice. The historical truth is more complex. Their bond was real, but it was more like caring siblings than passionate lovers. Francis wasn't just Mary's husband, he was literally the only constant in her life since early childhood. When you realize that Francis was home, family, and identity all wrapped up in one fragile boy, Mary's later obsession with France makes tragic sense.
In Reign, we see Mary and Francis ruling France together as equal partners, making important decisions and facing threats as a team. But the historical reality is completely different. Mary was queen in title only. Catherine de' Medici controlled everything. Mary's own letters to her mother, Marie de Guise, reveal her frustration. "I am queen of nothing." The show portrays Francis as a strong king who protects Mary from court intrigue. The truth is that Francis was so dominated by his mother that Spanish ambassadors reported he could barely make decisions for himself, let alone rule France effectively. Mary had more real power as a 6-year-old Scottish queen than she ever had as Queen of France. Reign presents their marriage as the center of French politics, but in reality, Stefan Zweig wrote, Mary Stuart discovered that being Queen of France meant being daughter-in-law to Catherine de' Medici. They were teenagers controlled by adults who used them for political purposes. The series shows Francis's death as a romantic tragedy that cements their eternal love. The historical truth is much grimmer. Francis died after months of agony from chronic infections. Court physicians described brain abscesses that left him barely able to function. His death wasn't romantically tragic, it was medically horrific, and it left Mary completely unprepared for the real world. The irony that Reign missed is this. Mary had been so protected and controlled as Queen of France that she had no idea how to survive the brutal politics waiting for her in Scotland. In Reign, after Francis's death, Mary becomes a strong, independent ruler who learns to navigate politics on her own terms. But the historical reality is that Mary's life after Francis was a series of disasters that would have broken a lesser person. Her return to Scotland led to marriages that were the complete opposite of her protected life with Francis. The show presents Mary's later relationships as political choices she makes confidently. But let me tell you the truth about Darnley. Mary's second marriage was a catastrophe. Lord Darnley was everything Francis wasn't. Physically strong, but cruel. Ambitious, but abusive. In 1566, Darnley orchestrated the murder of Mary's secretary David Rizzio right in front of her while she was 6 months pregnant. Contemporary accounts describe Mary going into premature labor from trauma. Rain shows Mary maintaining her strength through political challenges, but even her relationship with Bothwell, whom some historians believe she briefly loved, ended in disaster. Bothwell likely murdered Darnley, then kidnapped and possibly raped Mary before forcing marriage. When Scottish lords rebelled, he abandoned her to save himself. Throughout the series, we see Mary focused on her future political prospects. The historical truth is heartbreaking. Through all this horror, Mary kept her French correspondence, French books, French customs. She never stopped signing herself as Queen of France. As historian John Guy observed, it was the only time she felt truly loved and safe. Rain portrays Mary as a survivor who adapts to circumstances, but the devastating reality is that Mary spent her final 19 years imprisoned in English castles, surrounding herself with French memories. She kept French books, wrote in French, and maintained correspondence with French nobles. When executed in 1587, she carried a French rosary and signed her final letter, Marie R., Queen of France.
Rain gave us passionate romance, political intrigue, and the kind of love story that makes great television. But the real Mary and Francis story is both more innocent and more heartbreaking than any screenwriter dared imagine. Rain gave us a fairy tale of royal romance, but history gave us two children manipulated by adults, whose genuine childhood bond became the foundation of Mary's lifelong tragedy. The series showed us a strong queen who overcame heartbreak, but history gave us a woman so damaged by loss that she spent 44 years trying to find her way back to 18 months of happiness. Rain gave us multiple seasons of dramatic love, but history gave us a heartbreak so deep it outlived 3 crowns, 3 marriages, and even death itself. The real tragedy of Mary, Queen of Scots, wasn't losing her thrones or even her life. It was that 44 years, and still she signed her name the same way, Marie R., the queen who couldn't stop being queen, even when the king was gone. Sometimes the truth really is more heartbreaking than fiction. Real love, real loss, and a real woman who never recovered from losing the only person who ever made her feel like she was home. If you've made it this far, don't forget to give it a like. It really helps the channel grow. And if you love untold royal secrets, hit subscribe and stick around for more.